And this is Raw 12:51 a.m. This is the Warwick F1 show. I am your host for the first time, Chinmay Baratia. And yeah, welcome to the Warwick F1 show. And this week I thought it would be a good idea to at least have an idea how people rate the drivers individually last season, give our own gradings, and I can't do this alone. So here we have the head of Raw Sport, Will Kingswood.
Hello, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks.
You'll be good. Don't worry, you can do this.
Thanks. Yes, and yes, I've got my other co-host the second co-host, who is Warwick F1 Society's Jack Rowe. How are you doing?
Hello, I'm alright. I reckon you could do it on your own if you really had to. Nah.
Thanks. And also we have the Warwick F1 Society's president, Tom Bicknell. How are you doing today?
Hello, yes, I'm good, thanks. It's great to be back in the studio with you guys.
Thank you. Yeah, so I thought we'd just start off with this song. This will be Charlie Puth with Light Switch. And that was Light Switch by Charlie Puth. So I think what we can do is we'll go up in order of the Drivers' Championship and then just give like a grade to each driver from A to F. So A being it was a stellar performance, almost nothing went wrong, to an F, just straight out.
Well, we're doing A stars as well.
Ooh.
Oh, please give me not. God, it's just like, what? There are letters. There are A, B, C, D, E, F, and if you have an S, why is it there? It's wrong. I'm sorry.
Yeah, the A stars. GCSEs.
Yeah, well, no. Well, why don't you make it a 9 to whatever the 9 to 1 there? There you go.
Yeah, I did those GCSEs and I still can't get my head around them. But yeah, I mean, let's start off straight away. Nikita Mazepin, F. I think just don't need to say anything more.
Yeah, please. I feel like he might be on his own down there, but straight up, just stick him away.
What was his best performance of the season? Because, there are other drivers that didn't have great seasons, but they've still got a performance you can think of.
I think he beat Mick, twice, but I think it was probably when Mick had issues. I can't remember exactly the number. So it's probably one of those two.
Wasn't I might be remembering this wrong, but did he not send one down the inside of Mick in the Monaco hairpin?
No, I think Mick sent it down.
Or was it the other way around? Okay, don't mind me, there's nothing
of that godforsaken race.
Yeah, if Mazepin did that, it would just be straight out into the wall at the roundabout red flag straight away anyway. So, but yeah, I think, yeah, and also honourable mention. I know he's not a driver, but I think we can definitely give an F to Michael Massey for his, let's say, not very consistent stewarding at all this season. So I think I'll just add in that there as well.
He was just bad at his job. He's just really bad.
Yeah.
Fire him.
Get unemployed.
I mean, next in the championship would be Robert Kubica, but I don't feel it's fair to rate him. Bear in mind, he only did 2 races out the whole season, so you can't give him a whole season grade.
You know what? I think if you were going to stick him in a tier, though, it probably wouldn't be F anyway. Because he didn't do awfully. It wasn't great, but it wasn't awful. He's like a D or an E, maybe.
Yeah, I was thinking D. I mean, it says a lot that he did 2 races. Still ahead of Mazepin.
Yeah.
In the World Championship.
The fact that Mazepin is 21st in the 20 driver championship just says it all. But yeah. Then we'll go up to Mick Schumacher now. I mean, he's had a sort of up and down season. He's been in the worst car, but at the end of the season, he has managed to compete with cars that Haas shouldn't be competing with. I mean, what do you think, Will?
It's one of those things where, how much did he outperform the car? When you got an imbalance of teammates that you saw with Haas, and probably when we get on to AlphaTauri as well, there's a question is raised, is the worst teammate underperforming? Is the better teammate overperforming? I think Schumacher, that Haas was probably, would you say, the worst car we've had since, the HRT Marussia Caterham days?
I mean, the 2019 Williams was it 2019 Williams? The ones that didn't even get ready for testing?
Yeah.
That wasn't great.
Still scored a point, though.
It did.
I think
yeah.
Schumacher I'd probably give a C, maybe. He got into Q2 on, I want to say, on merit without, weather in France, but then binned it in the wall.
I think he has to be in D tier. I'm going to make the case for it. He just crashes too much. That Haas is not competitive. We know that, and he's beaten Latifi fine, so he's got to be ahead of Latifi, at least a grade ahead of Latifi. I agree with you there, but he's there for experience, not necessarily to go and try and get 18th every race. So there are too many occasions where he put it in the wall, I think. I can't remember too many off the top of my head, but
Monaco,
especially in
France.
yeah.
I think there are a few more.
Yeah, there were definitely
Hungary,
4 or 5 times.
He did it in practice.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I think that's changed my mind. D tier.
I think I probably would stick him in D as well. It really is hard to say, like you said, because if he was in a car against, say, I don't know, Alonso or Vettel or someone as his teammate, then it'd be easy to judge where he was at, because you know that they're quality drivers. Whereas two rookies in a car that cannot perform, it really is impossible to say just how bad that car is. But yeah, D's probably fair.
Yeah, I'll say D. You can argue C, but yeah, I think I can say. I mean, now we can move on to Italian Jesus Antonio Giovinazzi. I mean, very mixed bag this season. I mean, he did have Raikkonen's number in qualifying, but he didn't exactly deliver in the races, did he?
I think he got unlucky in a lot of cases. Like, the one that's springing out at me is Italy. Again, in Monza. He was, up in 6th or 7th before he spun out. He went through that period in the middle of the season where he was putting it in the top 10. Like, when he was fighting for a job, he was getting into the top 10 at, like, every race. I think he did get a bit more unlucky than probably he deserved, and I think that's maybe been the case for his whole career. So I'd probably go C for Giovinazzi.
I'm going to kind of double down on what Will said, in that I think he had not a great car, and that he was able to put some performances in. But I think if he goes in C tier, then you have to really question, like, how many drivers we're going to try and get in the top 3. I think it's probably... I'm not arguing that Giovinazzi did well and he was unlucky, but I just think, like, how much inflation are we going to have? How many drivers in that A
Do we need
band
to do,
if he's a C?
minuses and pluses?
I don't know.
Because I don't think I can put him in the same tier as Schumacher, because I think he did have that period during the middle of the season where he was performing really well in a car that was realistically probably most of the time the 9th best on the grid, maybe sort of 9th, 8th with Williams.
We're definitely going to have to do some adjusting at the end, but I think in these kind of tier lists, it is only fair if probably A, B, C are heftier than D, E, F, because it always feels unfair putting someone who was poor up, but then it feels worse putting someone who was great down a tier. Do you know what I mean? Like, none of the drivers were like awful minus Mazepin. So probably E and F are going to be a little bit sparse. But I do reckon C for Gio, because the rankings you guys did, I can see him up on the board there, and I feel like he's been done a bit dirty being in 16th.
I'm trying to remember what race we did them afterwards.
No,
Was it after Kota? I think it might have been.
Might have been, yeah.
yeah.
I think he just got unlucky. Maybe we'll adjust it. Maybe we'll have to add like pluses and minuses if we want to.
Yeah.
If we want to differentiate between drivers that maybe are in the same team.
Yeah, I mean, to be
Yeah.
honest, a C for Schumacher and C and Giovinazzi is two different things. You can give like a lower C and upper C.
Yeah.
And then, and I do agree that Giovinazzi was really unlucky over the season as well.
I think maybe we put let's do like the A to F, and then at the end of it we'll do like minuses and pluses if we want to differentiate between the two drivers.
Yep. And now we'll move on to the man who decided the championship in Nicholas Latifi with his sorry, I can just see
I've just had PTSD. Don't remind me.
complete PTSD over Abu Dhabi now. But yeah,
I would argue Michael Massey has more of a hand in deciding the championship there, but yeah, anyway.
I genuinely just had like flashbacks. This is really like throwing me. Yeah. Oh god, Latifi.
I don't know. I'd say Verstappen had the biggest hand in the championship here. Drove a brilliant race in Abu Dhabi, dominated, and ultimately came out on top.
He led one lap in that race that he needed to win, but it was the final lap. But, yeah.
No, Latifi, he really underperformed that car, I think. Like, don't get me wrong. George is a great driver, and he overperformed the car. But at the same time, I think it was the 8th best, and Latifi performed in the bottom 3 drivers generally. You know what I mean? Coming out, 18th in quali most weekends.
I mean, he just did not. He just barely matched Russell throughout the whole year, both in especially in qualifying and in the race pace as well. I would say.
I think a D.
If anyone is E tier, then it has to be Latifi. Otherwise, we might as well just remove it. Like,
I think
there's no one else who's going to go there.
Yeah, Latifi, we can definitely argue in E tier because he should have done a much better season, especially with what Russell did with that.
I mean,
car.
so what? He had his Hungary race. That was his standout race of the season. It was lucky that he ended up in 3rd place, but he held it there for about half the race, which is about as much as he could be expected to, and then he held on for points in the end.
Being so nice. He just doesn't have the pace. He just doesn't have that pace.
No, I'm saying no, that was by far his best race of the season.
All right, well, I wouldn't even have pointed it out. It's just straight E tier for me.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I would say, despite that being his best points race, it's still George. If George had just gone at him, would he have overtaken him? Probably, I would say. Because he finished 1 place behind him, and he said, keep Nick up there. But I feel like he still, in that race, wasn't as good as George was.
Yeah.
Despite finishing higher.
You know what? He cost Hamilton an E tier. FG tier. We'll make a new tier for Latifi for ruining my hopes and dreams. But yeah, I think E tier is probably fair.
E tier sounds reasonable. And now, I think we can do 2 more before break. We got Kimi Räikkönen. I mean, his last season in Formula 1, I think at this rate he just didn't care now. He just wanted to do his last season and go home and retire with his family. And there were times that he did do decent in races, and there were times where he just didn't think about what he was doing.
I think this season, Kimi, and I might get hate for this, I think Kimi is the definition of bang average. I think, well, I don't know whether to put him C or D, but I would say of the drivers, he was like bang average. He performed fairly consistently, neither very well nor very poorly. He was just sort of there.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think C.
Yeah, C seems reasonable.
Definitely, if Gio's got in the C tier, then we put Räikkönen. I'm a mathematician, bit of a fuss pot, but I think what you say is average. What we know in English is average. Is we say that because we're nice, but it's always just a fraction below what the mathematical average would be, right? Because I mean, look at that top 10. There are some incredible drivers on there.
Yeah, just for reference, we're looking at our list that is now still up there a few months later.
Yeah, I will. I'll put the link to the video which we did that in the actual podcast. But yeah, he can't go any higher than C, and he shouldn't be below Gio. So there's no choice, right?
Yeah, I think C. I'm looking at his results. So he got a 10th in Azerbaijan. I mean, everyone did well in Azerbaijan because Hamilton decided not to brake for that corner and Verstappen crashed. A 10th in Hungary, again. Like, all of his points positions, with the possible exception of Mexico, were fairly lucky in a way. Because what? Azerbaijan, that's quite lucky because a lot of drivers ahead ended up nowhere. Hungary, obviously, the carnage at the start put, 6 or 5 of what you would expect a top 10 to be out of the race. Russia, any of the results in Russia have gone just insane due to those final few laps. And then, Mexico, an 8th place in Mexico, that's exceptionally fair. That would be a standout race for me, but I can't put him anywhere above C. Especially when you compare it to some of the results that he's had in the past.
Oh yeah,
I think C seems completely fair to me.
Yeah, C sounds. I think I'll just agree with what Tom said. It's bang on average. He didn't do exceptional, but he wasn't bad either. He was just there in the middle, and he just didn't. And he just did it as his hobby, like he always did.
He was sort of one of those drivers that benefited from situations. Come on, there's one other driver that I especially think of that we were mentioning just before we started that always seems to not benefit from craziness, but always seems to be up there. when everything starts to go down and just end up there. And I think Raikkonen was sort of that, but in one of the worst cars on the grid.
Yeah. I think, nothing. Anything more to add there?
So just to confirm, he's going in C. Yes.
Yeah.
And then,
C-tier.
at the end, we'll decide whether we level him with Giovinazzi or not, or we put in a minus and plus next to it.
We obviously haven't got into the good drivers yet. We've got 2 C's, 2 D's, 2 F's, and an E. Currently, that's where we stand.
I mean, we're going to go into one of the first of possibly the good drivers this season with George Russell, who did come in P15 in the championship. I mean, just to give out the standard races where in that boat race of Spa, where he put that sensational quali lap in third, or a boat parade, you can call it that.
Yes. I think I'm doing this with the potential plus minuses in mind, but I'm going to say B.
Oh, I would agree.
I'm also going to agree with that. I think probably it's, again, one of those things where it's so hard to tell where he's really at. And when that is the case, I tend to say that we'll go a little bit more conservative on how good they actually are. I'm sure Russell next year will be excellent in the Mercedes, but there were a lot of crashes, to be honest. Especially when you look at he didn't do too well in quali crash-wise, I think.
He was a bit poor at the end of the season as well.
But
qualified by Latifi. That's embarrassing.
Obviously he's more than competent in Spa, but there was a little bit of luck with setups, I think, around that as well.
Didn't realise he finished 9th at Italy. That's probably his only one that didn't have any rain or anything to do with it. But I mean, he qualified 2nd at Belgium, 3rd at Russia in a Williams. That is most of the time probably the 8th or 9th quickest car, and he's up there in 2nd and 3rd. That is ridiculous.
I'm going to go ahead and say I also agree B tier, but I might make the case for A tier just while we're at it, because he was exceptional in a lot of qualifyings this year. Obviously, you said he did get out qualified by Latifi, but there's some really stellar performances in there. He possibly, I don't know about should have, but he could have had pole in Spa, and he held it for a while, which is impressive in itself. It being in that Williams, he out-qualified Lewis Hamilton, the 7-time champion.
The thing is, if he was on pole, that would have been his first win. He would have won his first race in a Williams.
So, if we're putting drivers in A tier, forgetting about the pluses and minuses at the moment, then was he better than the drivers that are going to go in B? Off the top of my head, ones I can think of that would probably be in B. You got I don't know, Perez and Sainz. Sorry, actually, that's quite controversial. I'm gonna ignore me. But sorry, is he as good as Verstappen and Hamilton? Then is he worthy of an A tier? Is my question here.
All right. Well, I think this is a plus minus conversation that might need to be had.
Definitely. I mean, and then we'll just move on to a person who had the biggest reputation for crashes. That is Yuki Tsunoda. Really quickly, I mean,
D.
Yeah, it's just a D. He's crashed too much.
I would have said E tier, to be honest. I think Gasly's good, but I think that Alpha Tauri is probably a little bit better than we give it credit for.
I think the 4th maybe redeemed itself right at the end, because
and the start in Bahrain, he tail-ended the season.
He was just really good at night in the desert. 4th in 4th in Abu Dhabi. I think he qualified well in Saudi Arabia and Qatar, I want to say. And then obviously Bahrain. Yeah,
and there was that one race, was it Hungary, where he held Hamilton up for 3 or 4 laps? Or was it
Turkey,
okay, sorry. Yeah, but I still think E tier.
Yeah, I just feel like E tier is going to be quite sparse if he's not in there, to be honest, because he probably wasn't the same level as Latifi.
E+.
I'll give E+,
I would say E+, D-.
We'll put him E, and then we'll decide what we want to do.
I don't know, especially with the hype that he brought up before. I just thought he just did not deliver the season, and he didn't exactly have a teammate that was easy to compete with Pierre Gasly, who just had a stellar season. So I think we're time to move on for another song now. This is Jesse Come On by Koala. And that was Jesse Come On by Koala. Yeah, so time to move on to 13th in the Drivers' Champion, Lance Stroll. That's
E.
Yeah.
I was going to say D.
I'm also going to say D. I don't think I think he gets a lot of stick for being bad, but throughout the years, and maybe this year was a bit mediocre for him, but he's still keeping up pretty well with Vettel. I can't remember exactly what the qualifying battle was, but I remember it was reasonably close. And he had some good performances, especially. I think he was doing pretty well in Baku before he crashed out, and that wasn't his fault. So,
I think that car was. So we said Haas is obviously 10th, Williams and Alfa Romeo was 8th and 9th. I think the Aston Martin easily the 7th,
Solidly 7th, I think. Yeah.
slowest car. And when you look at some of Stroll's performances, like a number of 8th places, a 7th place in Italy. He got a 6th place in Qatar. So I think it was just a very average season in a below average car. And I think, I'd go D and then maybe we discuss.
Yeah, Diesel. I think give the honourable mention also to Azerbaijan. Guess he had the tyre blower, but he was running quite a high position as well, if I'm not mistaken as well. So I think I would say D tier as well, unless somebody else. Yeah.
No, I'm happy with D. I'll stick it in the chart. I'm not going to argue too much on that one.
Yet. This is when I go D+, and you're like, no.
And then we got... And we'll move on to the other Aston Martin in Sebastian Vettel. I mean, he's had a much better season compared to 2020. The car wasn't competitive, and another mediocre one I would say on his end.
I think has to be C, just because of Hungary and Baku.
Yeah.
I was going to suggest C as well, but I don't know why, because I can't really think of any of his performances.
So his best ones were 5th in Monaco, 2nd in Azerbaijan, another 5th in Belgium, doesn't really count. And then obviously he would have been 2nd in Hungary had he not been disqualified.
So 5th in Monaco and 5th in Belgium. There must have been some pretty good qualifyings in there as well then.
Yeah.
For those two. Yeah, no, C sounds about right.
Well, he's 9 points ahead of Stroll. And that's even without the 18 points that he lost in Hungary. So I think you can't be putting them in the same tier.
Yeah, I think this season for Vettel's had a lot of highs. There has been Hungary, there has been Baku, but they've come at times when it's been a little unfortunate for other people. But it's also come with some really weird lows. Like, he got crashed with Ocon in Bahrain. It was like entirely his fault. And I think he got... How many super license points did he get? I remember it was a lot. It might have been like 5 or something, like in one go. And then, what else did he do? There was another one where he just like completely messed everything up. I can't remember. I might remember in a minute.
But then he got 1 million jelly beans at the end of the year, winning the Crypto.com Overtaking Award, of which that Ocon crash counted for an overtake, which is a unique way of qualifying for it. But I think C.
Yeah, C would do, I think.
Again, like Raikkonen, just bang average, I think.
Yeah, but better than better than Raikkonen, I would say. I think now we move on to the two Alpines. We'll start with Esteban Ocon. So I mean, he has had a very up and down year. There's a couple of there's that 4 races of the year as usual that he's on another league, and then the rest of the season is just very meh.
It's such a hard one to place Ocon, I think, because I mean he won a race. All right, there was a bit of good fortune, but he did have a good race. But then he's also been very poor in a lot of races.
I think this is almost identical to Vettel. He had good races and he had bad races, and his good races are really high. Obviously, he won in Hungary. Vettel got 2nd in Baku. His bad races were really low, and whatever they are, I think Ocon and Vettel almost had completely identical seasons in almost every way.
So you reckon it just like evens out to a C again?
Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't disagree with that. There's nothing you said that's wrong, and nothing I would try and say differently if I'd gone first. So yeah.
Yeah, just very good races, very bad races in a fairly average car. Maybe Vettel gets it slightly more, but I'd say earlier on in the season that Aston Martin was a lot better than it ended up being. Like in Baku, they were both having very good races. I think that car might have been 4th or 5th that race. Obviously, at the end, it was definitely down in 7th.
F1 is like that sport where you have to either prove that you're exceptional or have proven that you're exceptional in the past, or have the money. And he's just kind of, somehow he manages to float just in the middle. Like, he's definitely good. Like, there's reason for Alpine to want him, but he's just not quite good enough to, like, feel like they're going to want to keep him forever.
I know what you mean. There are definitely... I feel like Giovinazzi was that for a while. Just dependable.
Yeah. There's just nothing special about him, really. So I think C tier.
A little shout out, though, to his Turkey performance. The whole race on intermediates.
Oh, yeah.
I felt like we're forgetting about that, because that was a quality race. It goes under the radar.
So many good things this season. You just forget, like, he didn't pit at one race. He just didn't.
I mean, that is wild. He didn't pit for, 70 laps or something?
Yeah, about
that. That is crazy.
Yeah, and then one lap later, his tyres would have probably gone kaboom. So
I think he was losing, like, a bunch of time right at the end.
Yeah, he was.
You almost want to do it for the memes. Just not pit.
You get to lap 60 and you're like, wow, if you can, might as well. Would be a record for this.
He finished...
I think 10th, I want to say.
I think he finished 10th in that race.
Yeah, he finished 10th. He got
10th.
a point. Fair play.
So, yeah, I mean, yeah. And then we'll move on to the other Alpine. I mean, you can call him Rookie of the Year, but Fernando Alonso. I mean, especially Qatar, I'll give the biggest shout out to for his podium and the way he held off Perez. And, yeah, I would say... It did take him a little while to get used to the car, but bear in mind, he's not exactly the youngest of drivers, and he's had 2 years away from the sport. And I would say he's had a solid season despite competitiveness.
I'm gonna say C, with the caveat that I will differentiate them in the plus minus section.
Yes, yeah, I think I would agree with C. He's had a pretty reliable year, particularly having 2 years out. He's come back in, he's done a job.
Yeah.
Nothing special, but at the same time, pretty dependable.
So I've not been one to be too nice to Alonso. I don't think he makes for a good teammate generally throughout his career, and he's a little bit, I don't like his attitude. But I think this year, you're discrediting him a little bit. There have been some really good moments. I think the award for like the widest car in existence in Hungary.
I forgot about Hungary,
and he's had some good tussles. I think he's really shown that Alpine have been improving, and he's been a step ahead of Ocon. I really agree. Even though that win was there for Ocon, I think both drivers were at least just as good. Perhaps Alonso was better on race day, if not on qualifying day. And just throughout the season, he's been the one that's shown that that's there. I think, I really think putting him in C tier would be a poor decision.
I would say I have to agree with Jack there, actually. I would also make the choice to go off a tier because he's actually, I mean, especially given those performances and the fact that he was putting the Alpine in places I really think it shouldn't have been, because I would have given it the 5th fastest car of the year. And I just feel like he's edged it slightly better than what people are expecting this year. And especially compared to all the people who have gone into new cars this year, or are new to sport in general. He was one of the people who was slightly up there, I would say.
But then, he was, how many points? He was 7 points ahead of Ocon. And he just had a very similar season. He
had a podium in Qatar.
Ocon got a podium in Hungary.
Yeah, he did. But whose fault was that? Or who was responsible for that?
He would have still got a podium.
Bottas, I think.
Yeah, probably Bottas. Yeah, no, definitely Bottas.
But,
I mean, Alonso's just that consistent. He is just consistent. There's so many 6th places, that 8th places, that those are the points you need to pick up for.
I can give him B, but I will make a case for something in the plus minus section then.
Just looking at his results, he's got 2 retirements and a 17th and a 16th. But other than that, he has been very consistent. He's in the points, most races. I feel like B might be fair,
Fine,
actually.
we'll give him B.
Unless, what were those retirements like? Does anyone remember? One in Bahrain and one
I'd
in...
say Bahrain might have been just mechanical.
I think his was probably more mechanical. I don't remember him crashing into people a lot.
No,
USA
neither.
was definitely mechanical.
Yes,
I
it was,
remember
yeah.
that one.
No, yeah, B's probably fair then, actually.
Yeah, I'll go B then. All right.
And I think I'll move on to what I personally think is another B tier, but a very high B tier. Pierre Gasly.
Yeah, I'd say
I
high
think
B.
He said it's another solid season. He's got a podium in Baku. I don't know if he got a podium anywhere else this year.
A lot of fourth places.
Yeah, but
When the races tended to be fairly boring, or boringer, that's the word, then Gasly always seemed to be up there and always seemed to be mixing it with the Ferraris and the McLarens, which it's just so annoying that I can't tell how good that car was, because it feels, if that car was a lot worse than it was, he deserves a much higher grade. If it was genuinely up there and Yuki Tsunoda was just a lot worse this season, then like maybe Yuki deserves a lower grade. That's what's so annoying about AlphaTauri this season.
I think he's definitely one to watch for next year, isn't he? Not necessarily, because he's going to go win, but because you want to get that grasp on where the improvement is and where he is compared to everyone else. But yeah, I did say earlier, and I think that AlphaTauri is probably better than most people think it is. But I still think Gasly's been, think of how many like second row, third row qualifying starts he's had. Like he's so consistently challenging whoever at the bottom of the Ferrari and McLarens are, even when the Alpine is kind of supposed to be getting in the way, and he almost dragged them up to that fifth spot, almost. So yeah, I think he's minimum B tier.
I want to put him in A tier, and that's not just because I love Gasly. I think he goes so under the radar because, don't get me wrong, that AlphaTauri must have been good because he's never been this good in the past, but it's not better than the McLaren and the Ferrari, and he regularly outperformed those four drivers. I think he'd be sticking it on the second row, and like you said, the boring races he'd come out in fourth fairly consistently, and he'd just sort of be there, but no one would remember it because he's not exciting. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think I'd go like B plus or something like that.
yeah.
Not A minus.
Not quite, I think.
No, I'd say I'll agree with that being B plus.
Okay, if you three think that, I will concede that one.
All right.
Okay. And I think we'll do another one. This is a little bit tricky because I think Danny Ricciardo kind of had that
D.
very, very low to high to low. But
He had one high. His high was in Italy when he won. That was it. That was the only high of his season.
And even
D
then,
tier.
Norris was faster. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, for D tier, I'll consider.
That's like one of the easiest ones.
I was just thinking a bit difficult to put between D and C because I think, especially in the second half, he did bounce back a little bit, and obviously that win in Monza was just an epic drive.
Did he got what, fourth in Russia, that's lucky. USA fifth, 12th retired, 12th, and then another fifth in Saudi Arabia.
It is cruel to say like he doesn't deserve to be there because obviously we know how good he has been in the past, but I think he's one of those drivers that's just missed that opportunity to get in the right car at the right I guess the right car at the right time, because the Red Bull wasn't a race, wasn't a title contending car in the years that he was there, and perhaps it has been now as he's left. But the excuse that he's not getting used to the car fast enough just doesn't wash with me. So I do agree with you, Will.
That Monaco race, I've got to say, was the ultimate low for Ricciardo. 12th place, lapped by Norris. Considering he generally likes Monaco and it's his favourite race, that was really, really poor.
Yeah, I think, I'll concede to D tier if that's what people are thinking as well. So, yeah, we'll put it to D. And I think it'll be time for another song. And we are back. That was Seafoam Walls with Dependency. And I think let's move on to the top 7 of the Drivers' Championships. We'll start with, in 7th place, obviously, Charles Leclerc.
B.
Solid B.
I think I'd say solid to high B, and we'll come back to it, but
Yeah.
B at the moment. It was sort of like Gasly, but in a better car.
Yeah.
Yeah, he disappointed me this year. I've been a Leclerc fan throughout, and I like the whole 1 year in Sauber and then step up to Ferrari, and he beats Vettel. But recently, I'm thinking that maybe Vettel was just tailing off rather than Leclerc was exceptional.
There weren't really any exceptional performance. Maybe Britain.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
if you think about last year, there was that 4th place in qualifying in Britain. But this year, yeah, I agree with you. There's nothing that was really, really impressive. Britain again was good, but it doesn't, not quite as good as I'd have expected from him.
Yeah. There's nothing to add there, really. Solid B. And now we'll move on to number 6. I think the star of definitely the first half of the season, Lando Norris, who stayed in P3 for almost the entire first half of the season. I mean,
I think the first half of the season gives him an A. You can't. Maybe he drops down in A tier a bit, but you cannot take away from how good that first half of the season was.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know whether it was the car stopped being developed or Norris sort of tailed off, but if that first half of the season had continued into the second half, and say he may have got the win in Italy, driver of the season, I reckon.
Well, he would have got a win in Italy and then a win in Russia.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I think he did have a lot of bad luck. I think was at Qatar he had the puncher as well, and he was running like P4, P5 or something like that as well.
I mean, try and pick a race that you think he started tailing off at.
Russia.
For me, yeah, I mean, after Russia, perhaps. But how many races is that from the end of the season? There are only 7 races after that. So that's more than 2/3 of the way into the season that he was consistently excellent. Yeah. So you got to go A tier, haven't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, A tier. And I think we can add to I'd say one of the most underrated drivers. I mean, a lot less nowadays, but Carlos Sainz, I think just a consistency alone will put him in A tier. In fact, he was in P5 in that Ferrari.
It is a skill to be up there when everything else goes wrong for everyone else.
Yeah, it is.
And he always did that. Like Hungary 4th, Abu Dhabi 3rd, Russia 3rd. I think his only normal podium was at Monaco.
I mean, you could say it's a bit lucky, but at the same time, he must be doing something right because he does it all the time.
Yeah, because he's always there.
Like once or twice, maybe, but
yeah.
Yeah, I think this.
So I think A, solid A again.
Yeah. And now we'll move on to the Red Bulls and the Mercedes. We'll start with the person who came last out of the 4 those drivers, Sergio Perez, good Checo. There was some fantastic drives, but some tail-offs as well.
I think just a very, very solid B.
Yeah, he started off the season maybe at a C, but he did, he had the odd good race, and towards the end of the season he was quite good, defended Max well.
You can't crash on the way to the grid at Hungary, Belgium. That's embarrassing.
Yeah, I do think, I'm not sure I agree with the very solid bit, but I do think a B is a good grade for him. I think, there's the old curse of the second Red Bull seat, whatever it is, and they've really struggled to find 2 good drivers that will mesh together. And I don't think Perez is going to be a long-term solution for them unless they're able to do what Mercedes have done in past years. But I do think he is able to complement Max very well. I think he is a clear and good second driver, which is what Red Bull wanted him to be. So in that way, he's done his job, and he hasn't exceeded that, I think.
Yeah.
So for me, B tier.
Yeah, so B tier that is then. And we'll move on to the other second driver, Valtteri Bottas.
See, he was never there when he needed to be, ever. Whenever Mercedes needed 2 drivers up there, apart from in Portugal and very early on in the season, like Abu Dhabi, he needed to be up there, he needed to be helping, he just wasn't.
Counterpoint, he was there in Hungary.
So brilliant. In one race, and that's the race he just decides to pile into literally everybody.
I think Sochi, it was Sochi, right, when Max was trying to overtake, and he basically just drove around the outside of him, and that made the Mercedes look slow. Whether it was or not is a different question, but you're right, he did not do what he was employed to do. Am I wrong? No,
you're not wrong at all.
Tom's laughing. I think, C tier.
Yeah.
And then 2 A's for the last 2.
Yeah, I think there's just nothing else we can say. The top 2, both drivers equally deserving the championship. That's what I would say. Yes, one person did get it under
Right.
I'm not.
No, actually, Lewis crashed out in Imola, so he should be in B
He
tier.
still finished second. Oh, God. Love him. Right. I think, what? Do you want to do plus minuses quickly? We've got a few minutes left.
Yeah, we can possibly do that.
So, right, just go from the bottom. I mean, so we've got one driver in F. Mazepin. He can have an F.
Can we do like an F minus?
It's not even worth giving him a plus or minus.
I just thought I'd gone wrong somewhere because I counted 21 drivers on the thing. I was like, oh, Kubica, of course.
Okay. E's, who we got in E?
E was Latifi and Sonoda.
I think Snow can probably give an E plus. To be fair.
I mean, yeah, I think so. I think that fourth maybe brings it up to an E plus.
And Latifi just solid.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
a solid E.
And then and we got in D tier. I think was it we put Schumacher in D.
Yeah, D was Kubica, Schumacher, Stroll, and Ricciardo.
I think I'd give Ricciardo and Schumacher a D plus.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I'd give Stroll over Schumacher, but
And maybe
Not sure.
Stroll. Yeah, I think we
Yeah.
give Stroll a D plus as well.
Yeah, I think all three.
I think all three of them.
All three of them should.
All three of them sort of had their moments, but they only had like their one moment, or they just never. Stroll and Ricciardo and Schumacher had their one moment. Stroll was just a bit more consistently better than D.
I'd maybe leave Ricciardo without the plus then.
He did win a race though.
He did win a race.
And he won
You're not
it in
wrong.
good
Yeah.
fashion. Led the only 1-2 this season, which still baffles me.
I think,
But considering where Norris was at this season,
yeah, right. All
right, leave those three as a plus.
I think
Yeah, okay.
D plus for the three, and then a solid D for Kubica.
Okay.
I think we do have a few C's as well. Things that Giovinazzi, Latifi, Ocon, and Vettel, isn't it? We put
definitely not
in C.
Latifi.
No, Latifi was an E.
Latifi gets
No,
a
sorry.
Latifi.
Latifi was in D.
Oh, Latifi. Yeah, Latifi just
was
gets a
in
D.
I put it wrong. Sorry.
Right.
Yeah, C was obviously the two alphas, Vettel, Ocon, Bottas.
Vettel, I'd give a C plus to.
Yep, I would agree with that.
Ocon as well.
Yeah,
I think
I'd say Ocon as
they
well.
are genuinely had identical seasons. And then I'd maybe give a C minus to Raikkonen. Yeah.
Right, hang on. So you think Raikkonen's better than? Sorry, you think Giovinazzi did better than Raikkonen this season? You do?
Yeah, I think Giovinazzi just got unlucky. I think Raikkonen got
Alright.
lucky.
I think Gio did have that really good run of form, and I kind of think that pushes him up there a little bit more. Other than that, they were fairly equal.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
And Bottas, just C. Just get out of
Yeah.
my sport. He was so useless all the time.
needs a Formula E seat.
Yeah.
I do think he's a reasonably good driver, but he just lacks
Can't
that guts.
overtake. He can't overtake to save his life.
He's got pace. I like him as a person as well, but he's just like he needs to just that fraction a little bit more
Yeah.
bottle,
He
doesn't
doesn't
he?
have enough porridge, is what it is.
How do you think he's going to go in the Alpha if he can't overtake, by the way? Just quickly.
I think maybe there's a lack of expectation might benefit him more, but okay.
Yeah.
And we probably should move on quickly. Cause
The Bs.
Yeah.
So the Bs are Russell, Alonso, Gasly, Leclerc.
I think Gasly and Leclerc we can give it.
Gasly,
B+.
Leclerc, B+.
Yep.
And I think the other two I'd give B.
I'd give Russell a B minus, but
I think just he was second and third in a Williams.
I know.
Nah,
No,
I think
I
solid
don't
B,
like that.
Solid B.
I don't think there's many minuses. I think it's just about who gets the pluses.
Yeah.
And then
obviously the A's.
The A's.
So you got Sainz, Norris, and obviously the two championship boys.
I would give Sainz an A minus.
Yeah, I think I can go with that.
yeah, I seem to remember when we did our top 20 that it was very clear who we thought was third place, right? So I think in that case you'd put Sainz A minus.
I
Things
think
have changed a little bit. When you look at that, they've actually changed a fair amount. But
I think Sainz A minus.
and then you put Verstappen and Hamilton and got to go A plus,
Verstappen,
haven't you?
Hamilton A plus.
Yeah.
And then who was the other A?
Norris.
Yeah, Norris.
Norris
Just
is
solid.
Would have
A.
been A plus up until I'd say Russia.
Yeah, I agree.
And then just the rest of it brought it down to an A.
Yeah, I think.
So we're done?
yeah, I think that's about it. We've got our drivers. So yeah, I mean,
Do we want to just run through them quickly
so yeah.
from
we can-
top to bottom?
Yeah, okay. So A pluses, you got Verstappen and Hamilton. Then you got Norris on a solid A and Sainz on an A minus. You got Gasly and Leclerc on B pluses and Russell and Alonso as set Bs. In C tier, you got Vettel and Ocon on plus, Bottas and Giovinazzi on C, and Raikkonen on a C minus. D tier, you've got Schumacher, Stroll, Ricciardo on D plus, and Kubica on a solid D. E tier, Tsunoda E plus, Latifi E flat, and F tier was Mazepin and Michael Massey.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I think thank you everybody, and just yeah.
Civil discussion. Can't wait for the civility to end in F1 as soon as the lights go out in Bahrain and Hamilton and Verstappen just instantly collide with each other.
Yeah, I'll take no more. Yeah, so thank you, Will. Thank you, Tom, and thank you, Jack.
Yeah.
Anytime.
Sure.
See you next week.
Yeah. See you next week. This is Raw 12:51 AM, and this is your host Chinmay Baratia.